here for the second part of this morning, we covered the knee, and our theory on the lower back is there's so much else that can go wrong in life from above the back to below the back. Most people with back issues have stiffer hip flexors, stiffer muscles between the thigh, and so even to get into positions, the back, you can see it becomes like the bursting point of the body. Not to mention if the outer hip is too tight, and then you have above the back. Most people that mid-back can't extend this way. Didn't know how to do that without the other hand there. There we go. You guys are getting the raw, unedited version with us in the gym. So there's all these things that go wrong in modern life, and we haven't even gotten to the lower back yet. Then with the lower back, most people aren't training the opposite side, the lower abdomen area, and the QL, which is a muscle on either side of the spine. So just like this morning, we're gonna take you through our actual back ability session, starting with Fernando, who is saving us for this session, because as you saw, we went hard in the first workout, and Fernando makes an electrolyte product that we use. If you want to just give us the
quick rundown on that. Well, anyways, it's called Amino Hydrate. For the guys in here, there is free samples back there with the funnel.
Go get some before this session.
And if you want to support or try and buy one for yourself or take it back, just talk to me. But if you want to buy one here, you just buy it online, okay, and use code KOTG10. That's his affiliate code to thank him for hosting this. That'll help support him and everything he's doing here. And you'll get a little discount. He'll get a little fun from that. And yeah, it has the essential amino acids and it has all the electrolytes. It's actually based on the coconut water natural formula. So that's why I chose that formula. And yeah, try it out, see if you like it.
Yeah, and give Fernando a follow to learn a lot more about diet and stuff.
Yeah.
Look, ATG, we respect whatever kind of diet you do.
Sure.
Our purpose is teaching these exercises masterfully, so that's what we're gonna get into.
Yep.
So Fernando's gonna show how we address the split squat for back ability, and Alyssa will end up showing a regression. Alyssa will flow with us and show a regression for every step.
Perfect. So yeah, so even when I started with elevation, and the first thing that how Ben mentioned is the first thing you gotta kind of unlock is that hip flexor flexibility, okay? So most common thing we all do is sit, it tightens over time. So to get that low back opened up, we're gonna first stretch here, and we use a pause, okay? So we wanna stay here 5 seconds engaged. It's not relax and hang out here and round your back. It's actually actively stretch, push, try to straighten out your knee. Feel that stretch, 5 seconds, and then come up.
And maybe one of the most underrated parts of the ATG system is instead of just passively stretching, we're actually under load. We're trying to get stronger. So every ounce you get stronger on the split squat, you're loading more through the hip flexor, through a lengthened position, which might be, I mean, I saw a woman stand up the other day, and that was it, and she walked off. It's like, oh my, like the light bulb kind of goes off, like, oh, no wonder so many people have mysterious back issues. It's the bursting point of the body. So this one is common sense to address that.
And then you just go lower, right? As you increase that flexibility, if your ankles are a little tight, you can use a buddy to get in there. Make sure that knee goes all the way over the toe. If your ankles are flexible enough or you work towards that, you go flat ground. And same thing, it's a 5-second pause, okay?
This allows you the time to really think about the stretch through the back leg.
Yeah.
So we're not just pumping up for the knee development. I would actually do bottom quarter reps for the knee development. That's what we did on the quote unquote Monday session, knee ability. And you wanna go here?
You want here?
Sure.
So this whole time I'm squeezing my glute, relaxing in the back here, actively stretching the hip flexor in the front, okay?
This morning Alyssa showed with benches using her hands. So she can do this flat ground, but she's showing where you might start. Having had 2 kids, she starts going through these regressions and building back up. What would you say, probably after about 12 weeks to start this one? I don't know.
Yeah, 12
Take
weeks.
your time.
And honestly, this is the one that I felt the most after pregnancy. Wait 12 weeks, clear it with your doctor, and then this is the one that I felt the most after having a baby. Those muscles are just very, very weak. And I felt it, I tried it around 9 weeks, I think, but it should be awesome, and it really helps.
So 9 was a little too soon? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so take your time building back this one. I would advise building it before you go through the whole process and have the kid. We're just showing another example. You could use benches, you could use poles of some sort, you could use a stairwell that you can hold on. Mm-hmm. So this is how we adjust it for back ability. And as we flow from the hip flexor, well, before we get to the back, we have a number of areas that can be tighter through here. Let's slap some 20 kilos on there. Oh, I guess you can MacGyver. We got a 20 kilo anywhere?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, right there at the split squat, we can use that.
And Ben, I want to say on the split squat and along with this one is that, you know, once you're getting more comfortable, don't be afraid to add that load because the actual weight will help stretch you out more. So a lot of people go, oh, I'm not flexible enough to have load. Well, using the right amount of load can actually increase your flexibility.
The right load is the one that you feel the best with the stretch. So if you go too heavy, you'll shorten up. If there's not enough load, you might stay stiff in it. Alyssa's going to show as I show with the bar. Yeah, here, why don't you grab it while I demo some reps?
Some people that are bigger, actually, this is a tip, if you have bigger linemen, NFLers, or bigger people, actually, they need a bit of load because they can't even get into the position without load. No one's saying break a world record, but some load actually really helps them. Anyway, my 1 cent.
Yeah, and we're getting into the deeper teaching points here. So this is not knees over toes training. This is knees behind toes training. So you want the ankle just in front of the knee. That's really going to lock in the stretch on the inner thigh. So the reason I can go down with mobility in a squat like that is not just the ATG split squat, but it's also opening up those inner thigh muscles. This is something kids seem to really have, and it stiffens as we get older. So Alyssa's showing how you can elevate the bench. Fernando is going to get her some dumbbells and show how you could gradually add dumbbells. And then I'm going to put this more at a side angle so you can see the intent even with load. So even if I'm adding load, the best weight is the one that feels best on the stretch. So I'm not going to shorten my range because of the load. I'm thinking to use that. I'm thinking about my inner thigh muscles, digging into that stretch, lowering my abs to the bench, not letting my chest touch the bench. So I'm not rounding my back. I'm resisting the ability to round. And that mobility comes from below the lower back. So combined with your split squat, you not only have tools to restore more childlike mobility under the back, you also have tools to rocket launch athleticism. If you ask me, the cheat code to changing power development, split squat and seated good morning. When I coached a high school football team, we had the most D1 scholarships per player in America, and I truly believe that the foundation of that was split squat and seated good morning. I don't believe any football team has mastered those two strength through length exercises like that team did. Alyssa's showing here a progression. Once you flatten the bench, you could use dumbbells to the floor. The dumbbells stop you. If they get too heavy, you could let them go. The version I did with the bar in the back, that's not the position you want to fail in. You want to really know what you're doing with this exercise by that point. Good job, babe.
Thanks.
So
you said basketball and football. You've trained both teams. What were you actually talking about there?
Training a high school football team.
Football. You said basketball in the beginning of that.
They did good too, but the football. No, but it was probably to take a group of high school football players, it took a lot of work to get them to buy into these unusual exercises. But the results were insane. They didn't have a lot of players on the team, so guys could not get hurt. They had to train to be bulletproof, not just to avoid injuries in the weight room. So with these techniques, you can build up your body with low risk in the weight room, making your tissues less likely to break down in the sport. Ben Clairfield is going to flow in here, one of Charles Poliquin's top students, really a bunch of us. Fernando, even Alyssa studied with Charles Poliquin.
So I think I can't emphasize enough. I think one of the main ATG principles is the understanding that there's not athlete workouts or exercises and normal people or broken people exercises. It's all on a spectrum of where are you with brutal honesty with yourself or your coach checking. So if you think that you should be doing that with the barbell on your back, but really you should be here with the dumbbell, or really you should be, regressed even more so, that's where you should be. But the magic of it is that if you trust the process, if you trust the time, if you let your coach you, if you follow the principles, follow the recipe, you can progress to having a bar on your back with a significant quantity of load. And the cool thing is that rehab and performance, it's one and the same. It's just where are you on the spectrum of whatever joint you have that you need to take it to whatever progression or regression of the exercise. So Charles told me something, I remember him saying, he wished he spent more time on flexibility and mobility. And I think there's a lot of people that go down the rabbit hole of that but forget to load. And there's a lot of people that load too much and forget to actually add mobility, which is through a full range of motion. And I think, I think Ben's shown it, Keegan's shown it. What we do is, instead of the perfect flexibility workout where you spend 2 hours a day, or if you hire someone to stretch you 6 times a week for an hour at thousands of dollars, we figured out ways for us that we can, again, regress it all the way. This is a phenomenal stretch for the low back. A lot of people get this.
Yeah, and Alyssa, you're going to get in a pigeon pose on the floor.
And you want to do the...
We're actually going to show how sometimes
Some people can do this, but this might be too hard.
So
Alyssa's got great mobility.
some people can get into this position. For me, merely looking at that position would have caused me terror because my knee on the outside used to pop out. And it turns out this has happened to a lot of other people, and it's rarely talked about. And the most annoying thing about the knee popping out is it happens in positions like this. So you have to get more flexible in those positions. But to try to stretch those positions, it often pops out. So that's when I started doing this version with the bench, was to keep the knee pinned down.
And
so
everyone has a bench.
In this case, Alyssa is actually showing what someone more advanced can jump into. But someone super tight, you can scale the height of your bench. So you can get any client into this.
Maybe
you still have your
come
hands.
Come see the knee, so where the angle is.
Yeah.
It's in the realm of 90, in the realm, a little bit more.
So you still have the idea of assistance. This hasn't been explored that much. I like to progress this. I go there and I think to be strong out of that position. And as a test, I like when I'm thinking about back ability, that's the final one. Like it should be like head to foot, shouldn't have resistance to it.
But there's nothing wrong with going to all the different parts of it. So it's not like, oh, I went to the knee, that's wrong, and I should be going to the toe. No, actually, you should explore all the different places.
Yeah.
And the magical thing is...
It could be tighter in there, tighter there.
Obviously, as you get better, you click it down one. And some people will even start even higher up, and that's enough for them. They really feel it. Deep piriformis, glute, low back type stuff.
Yeah.
And the question, there's a great question. People say, where should I feel it? The answer is like, depends. Depends on your tightnesses. So some people feel deep in the glute, in the piriformis, and some people feel it in low back. Some people feel it in their knees. Some people feel it in their back leg, their back hip. But it's all good. So
strength through length.
Alyssa's,
Yeah, that's amazing.
Phenomenal. Just hanging out, having a nap. Yeah, I mean,
And that's the thing about the lower back is, if you have a mysterious back problem, odds are something in the chain is out. It doesn't mean you're going to be impervious to any physical forces, but usually something is a weak or tight link. So what's tight for one person might not be for another.
And the idea that I think there's a very incorrect idea with strength and conditioning, whether it's rehab or performance, that there's one exercise. If you only did one exercise, that would fix all things. I mean, to be fair, the split squat's close. But anyway,
but the reality is we have enough other tools that we could not split squat and we could work our way around it.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that we would want to, but it just means that you should have enough tools in your toolbox that you're going to be able to give yourself good all-around results. And you don't want any weak or tight links in your body. It's not about just so when people think about the back, the best back exercise,
there's no such thing.
The big this, we call it the big 8 because there's a lot of areas here. And today we're covering like 6 of these areas. And then tomorrow going into the shoulder, really what's above the lower back would actually finish out 7 and 8.
And again, and the magical thing of this is there's so many variations where you can continue to train and get stronger from a healing point of view, but also from a performance point of view. So we have so many variations that we can get into. But that's the thing to realize is address where you are on the level of regression or progression as honestly as you can, and push yourself to that, just to the limit, pain-free limit, so that you can progress and improve. So if you're Alyssa, you can do a pigeon like that, and she's kind of like, oh, whatever. But for myself, this is where I am, or I need to be a little bit lower, and just in time you can take the reps and take the sets to warm it up, and then you can click down and get lower. But the thing I would like to say about mobility and stretching is it's not the same as putting more weight on the bar. You've got to be much more patient. Those ligaments, tendons, and tissue, you have to be patient, really patient.
It's a long game.
And I think that we were talking about this with a lot of the coaches. Ben shows a pancake and was like, oh, I got to get my pancake in 3 weeks. It might have taken Ben 2 years to get there. But people are like, oh, I got to push, so I'm going to do it every day. Oh, I popped my adductor. I hurt my hamstring. take your time. And I think maybe that's my secret message of these few days is trust the process, take your time. There is no rush. If you're alive, you can improve, but you can push too hard sometimes. So push yourself, push each other, but take the time. That's old Ben talking.
Appreciate it. It's amazing advice. All right, so we've covered 3 areas. We've covered what's below the lower back, and it's not the only things, but these are 3 legitimate areas below the lower back. Now we're going to cover the lower back. So we're going to go from the lower ab to the sides to the back. In this room, one of the first people to come to the original ATG, where we have an unusual setup, was Zach. So Zach's going to come up here and do a low cable pull-in to failure. So I'm going to be next to Zach. Drew can come around to a side angle here. So this would seem unusual. Let's see. How much do you weigh, Zach?
About 200 even.
Okay, so this is 99 pounds. So it's about half his body weight. He's going to try to go for 20 reps. I'm going to show some options you could do if you didn't have this setup. So before there was a Knees Over Toes Guy social media page, we were doing all this stuff in person at the original ATG. And this was something we found extremely valuable, was developing not just the six-pack, but the strength below the abs, in the lower abs and the hip flexors. So he's got half his weight on here. You can just start repping. So this is allowing him to strengthen the muscles that pick up the feet. So unlike a traditional ab exercise, regardless of how the abs may function, like I think this is a good six-pack exercise too, but if you've never done this, you really feel it in the lower abdomen. That's why this is actually Alyssa's favorite exercise, and believe it or not, she made us get one of these cables for home. So I kind of hide it in the corner because I feel bad having this like this costs more than like our entire rest of our gym combined. Nice. Give him a hand. Killed it. Definitely check Zach out on social media. If you're recovering from ACL or a soccer player, this is your cheat code. Soccer has not tapped into ATG yet. Zach is your cheat code for soccer. He's one of the early ATGers, became a freak athlete himself, getting unbelievable results. Regardless of, look, I don't script every video, right? I might not be perfect. At the end of the day, in any industry, your results are what is going to really move things forward for you. And Zach is doing that for soccer, and particularly people are coming in after ACLs with him. So thank you, sir.
Thank you, man.
All right, so Alyssa is now going to show at any level you can do this exercise. This is one reason why we think there needs to be ATGs. There needs to be places where you can go in, you can sled, you can do exercises and scale them to whatever level. You don't have to be forced into anything you don't want to do. You want to just do a couple plates?
Yeah.
Okay, so she'll set up here with a couple plates, and I'll show some options if you don't have the cable set up. So I wanted to show the real deal, not just alternates. You may have seen the monkey foot online where you can add weight to your foot. I actually think that's phenomenal for strengthening the hip flexor, but the monkey foot, you won't feel it in the lower abdomen the same. And I think long term, you need something where you're lifting both legs to protect the groin and the lower ab area. So after having kids, this is the area Alyssa and I would run group classes for women. Yep, you can start and just do what feels like a good set. Alyssa and I ran group classes for women, again, before there was Knees Over Toes Guy on social media. And we saw that women who had children, this was the exercise they lost the most strength in. Also, people as they get older and stop sprinting, this strength can just disappear. So you'll find in elderly clients and women who've had kids, this can be an absolutely crucial exercise. It doesn't make sense to protect the lower back that you would be weak on the other side. Now, the most common reason for running from strength from this area was that you don't want to stiffen up the hip flexor. But with the full range of motion split squat, we're gaining strength through length in the hip flexor. So you can have, with the split squat lengthening the hip flexor, you can do all the hip flexor training you want, and you could still get into something like a split. So that's obviously not poor flexibility. You're not going to tighten up too much. Good job, babe. Last little tips is you could actually start right now watching this video, and you could hold 2 seconds at a time, holding hip flexor up. And as a trainer, heck, if you had a gym and you got turf and a sled in there, you could actually get to work right with the sled and turf and doing 0 versions of exercises. And I've had 2 mics the whole time.
Yeah.
And you can even give an athlete a measurable target of holding off the ground. If you drop 1 foot, alternate like that, that's tougher than like this. If you lean forward, that's tougher than like this. And everyone in here today, I want you to try the real low cable setup, because most gyms aren't set up to try the real deal. But I also want you to try and compare a hanging, we call this a level 1 gar hammer raise, where you're just raising your elbows, or raising your knees towards your elbows. We call that level 1 because a level 2, you would straighten the leg, fight down to parallel. But for high repetitions, this is also going to work really well. So I would compare that to your low cable pull-in or reverse squat. In both these cases, we're working the muscles that pick up the leg. A note is that here, you're not picking up your legs, you're picking up the weight. So if you have strong, powerful legs, you may be proportionally stronger on the cable, and then here, when you have to pick up those muscular legs, it may feel a lot harder. So knowing this for a client with skinny legs, they may think they're getting pretty good here, but you also want to be loading in some way for good measure. And then a client with really strong legs who thinks they're good at the cable, when they play sport, they have to pick up those legs. So also have the L-sit or the hanging gar hammer raise. So we can flow from there. We've worked what's below the spine. We're now on the other side of the spine, and now Marcel has the strongest QLs in ATG history. And he really took this seriously. Here's the microphone, sir. You can hold that while you hold weight with the other hand, or however you want to do it. So Marcel's going to get in here on a back extension, and he's going to show there's a muscle on either side of the spine called the QL, quadratus lumborum. So lumbar is your lower spine. You have muscles on either side of the spine. If you play sports, they're probably in balance from swinging or throwing or kicking on one side.
So I play tennis. A lot of tennis players will be able to understand the fact that we usually favor one side over the other. Usually with serves, we're serving with our predominant side. Also, forehands are usually the most aggressive shot. You're constantly contracting your left QL as you rotate, but you tend to neglect the other side. So the beautiful part about this exercise is that you can address each one and start bringing them more into balance. Same thing with football. Fernando was a quarterback. He's constantly throwing with his dominant arm. That opposite QL is getting neglected. So here, we're using a back extension machine, trying to keep your body completely straight. You're going to go down to as far down as you can feel a stretch in here, and you're just going to contract. And our standard in ATG is being able to do 10 reps with at least 33% of your body weight.
That may be Marcel's standard. I don't go there. No, I'll be honest. I just work to master these with my own body weight. I can do these and be sore just from my own body weight. It's like, wow, just from handling my own weight. So for my purposes in basketball, I get in here and I just master my own body weight on either side. So I can be, when I make moves, I can thrash my body from left to right and not have to worry about that effect on the spine. And any regression is valid. Any way that you can find to get into an exercise without pain is valid. So Alyssa will show here, and I put this so you can put your hand there. So you go sideways and try putting your right hand there and put your left hand up here, and then you can see if you can get some stretch, and then go back up. So because most people haven't trained this muscle, it's super important to know with yourself and with clients, you can have extreme delayed onset muscle soreness with this. Who around the room has done this and then like had crazy DOMs? By a show of fingers, how many days were you sore like when you first? So see, I'm seeing like 8 days. Okay, 7 days, 10 days, right? So if we're taking an exercise with your own body weight for a few sets of 10 and someone's sore for 10 days in that muscle, this is like a newbie muscle for most people. It's a muscle they haven't trained, and we're talking about the spine. Let me get the microphone.
No matter how strong you are too, like I'm squatting 500 pounds or you know,
Nice job, Ben.
doing back extension with 150, 200 pounds on your back. I remember when I first started doing these several years ago, it was my body weight 10 reps, and from what he was saying, I played quarterback as a young guy, and man, I was sore for at least a week. So don't be afraid, again, to drop that ego, just find the right progression, and no matter if you're strong in certain areas, it doesn't mean you're strong in all the areas.
Yep. Amazing point. So we've only got one last area to cover, which is then actually moving the lower back in itself. And we're going to show different options for this. The ATG does not have an absolute viewpoint on things. We're trying to look at physics. We're trying to use what has worked. The reverse hyper is, Fernando can come demonstrate this in the background. This is an exercise that so many people have said they've gotten results from. And I think it's really cool that they now have like an affordable version of this. Because look, if that many people have gotten results from exercise, I think it's worth looking into. Maybe this is more like a sled for the lower back. Yeah. So at the bottom, this is able to stretch out, but it's in a position where the back is not loaded so hard. Now, with the ATG viewpoint, we're also trying to get bulletproof to the area, and there's ways to work this in light. So while you can see Fernando here, like this would be a totally valid option for your lower back part. We're not telling you like, oh, you have to do a Jefferson curl. However, Keegan's also going to show you that you could start single leg with a Jefferson curl super simply, and he'll help Alyssa regress it.
One thing on this.
Yeah, here's the mic.
Just a little tidbit from a historical point of view. I could just take it over.
We can just.
There we go. I could just say it there. Louis Simmons, who was a very good friend of Charles Poliquin and a legend in the powerlifting world. People used to tell Charles, like, oh, don't you hate Louis, or don't you hate this other person, or whatever. He says, no, they're amazing. I agree with Louis 99% of the things. So the argument that he had with Louis was not an argument. People are like, oh, but you don't low bar back squat. And Charles says, yeah, but I have athletes. Low bar back squatting is for powerlifters. There's nothing wrong with it. But for Louis, the story with Louis is that he was the one that really drove the reverse hyper and popularized it throughout the world. And for him, they said he was never going to lift again, and he had crazy injuries. And he said that the reverse hyper was what allowed him to come back and squat trucks and deadlift and all that kind of stuff. So, I think the thing with the ATG is Charles taught me this, but really all of us do this. We have the Bruce Lee principle in us, which is, keep what is useful, discard what is not. So we're not dogmatic about movement. We want to find the things that help people, and we give credit where credit's due. So Louis Simmons, reverse hyper, it's a phenomenal part of the strength curve where you're horizontal and it's challenging you versus the good morning, which is the other side. So when you're fully straight,
like if someone can get on here and like
that's a reverse hyper. That's a reverse hyper.
High repetition. Now, to instantly start, like Keegan will show you with literally nothing, like no slant board at first. So the cool thing too with ATG is like we're just trying to help people. So I'm so happy that we're able to have this to show this as an option as well. But what Keegan is doing here, Keegan has been traveling around the world and has made incredible gains. Often, like he's having to go places and then get a gym. And you're not just going to start by shipping one of these all over the world. And so he's been able to do this with no equipment. So actually it would be cool if you could coach Alyssa through showing someone getting into this first without a slant board and then with a slant board.
We did some of these in Silicon Valley.
Alyssa got her front splits
gym.
or close to it.
Yeah. But yeah, the single leg variation is a really good one to put a bit more emphasis on the hamstring. It also prepares the lower back for doing the weighted stuff. We're getting some stimulus to the lower back, but you're going to open up the hamstrings a lot. So I like putting most of the weight on the front foot on these, and so the back foot is just really there for balance. So you should be able to pretty much take it off the ground if you want to.
Flexed.
As you get stronger and as your balance gets better.
Pretty impressive right here.
Yeah, Alyssa's got
I'll show
great
you
mobility.
Even lower that someone could start here by holding onto something.
Yeah.
So you think about so many people tweak the back,
Yeah.
reaching to pick something up off the ground. So the stiffer that is, and remember, we're not saying only do this. Look at all the underlying parts. So this is our back ability workout, and only the last thing we're doing is moving the lower back. I find it's tough to balance like that.
It's super tough.
That's why
That's
why I'm showing like to go by something immovable, to go by a bench or something like that, and actually start strengthening that position. Keep the quad flexed. Most people have gotten really weak through a stretched position there, and then with the slant board, that adds another layer to it. I find particularly after knee surgeries, we're left so stiff behind the knee, and so getting a slant board and being able to work it in that position, for me, the left side is the one I had surgery on, so that's the one that had it wouldn't straighten as much, and so even to this day, when I get into this position, it's like, oh man, that feels so good.
Yep. You're gonna feel the nerve more. All the fascia's getting
I
pulled.
stole the regression.
Yeah.
Well, in some cases, I needed more regression. I'm sure you were ahead of me on something like this.
AKA caps.
Yep. Oh shit. Yeah, she had stronger calves than me when we first started dating. That was a low burn. It's a deep burn.
Same with this one. We want.
Oh, it did. We're on a calf machine, and she could do more. I'm not talking about pound for pound. She could do more absolute weight than me on a calf raise when we started. So, and now let's get some 20 kilos out for Keegan, because
As you progress with this, like even
get
having
20 kilos on the bar for
most
Keegan.
of the weight on that front foot, this other one is really not doing anything. The tendency, like initially you're going to want more weight on the back foot because it's just going to mean less load. But if you're using
wow.
the load, then yeah, and it'll open up the same as all of the hip flexor stuff and the reverse Nordics, which at first seem like they'd be impossible. But if you consistently do these, you will touch your elbow to your toe. It's also a bit of like the scapular movement as well. If you have your scaps actually go up, because I like handstands and hand balancing, I have that movement as well. So that movement is actually showing up.
Wow.
When I'm bending forward on these, but these will do a lot for the hamstrings. I think it's part of the reason why I've got my first Nordics last week,
So
and then today I
first
did a
Nordic of
bunch.
your life in your 40s.
No way.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
That's
Today I did a bunch, and
Yeah.
it was like easy, and I was like,
No, he's like a different athlete. He's running faster, jumping higher, like the tissues are better. Now I'm putting him to the test, and you're going to have to show an elite Jefferson curl.
I was able to do less than you. Your 7-foot guy today. I don't know if any of you guys saw him on the Nordic, like his first session. Everyone here, I was worse than him, and I don't have the excuse of being,
I'm training like a 7-foot tall guy who's trying to make
Yeah,
the
when I
NBA.
came here.
It's the idea, 7 foot tall, master the stuff the small guys can do. He's not even close to a Nordic. The natural freak athletes can do Nordics, having never trained them. So this is absolutely elite, that he can pick up the bar from the ground without even bending the leg. So just like me jumping off stuff and doing these demonstrations, the whole idea is that this is the result, and he can work the foundation of that without any equipment, literally with no equipment. He's able to start working the foundation of that. Meanwhile, there are things like sleds and reverse hypers that are also part of the process. So the idea is not only body weight or only machines to regress. Master it all, know it all. Then you can help any client from anywhere. Wow. This is insane. Wow. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
I think that's
40
what
years old.
I think that's what helps.
Give him a hand. That's
pull him into-
insane. Absolutely unbelievable. Leading the way.
It's good for like a lot of guys get strong in the gym and then you feel really old as well. I'm sure most of us meathead kind of guys my age, you like
Still got it.
you like doing squats and deadlifts and bench press, and then at some point you feel like, man, I really am scared to move. And so many guys hurt their backs with tiny little weights, where if we just do a little bit of round back work, it doesn't matter really how far you go with it, you feel so much younger. And everyone that you work with is going to feel younger with this movement. It also means if you do get out of position with your squats or your deadlifts, that you've already prepared for it a little bit, rather than the first time that the spine bends a tiny bit. You've never done that before. All of a sudden you're doing that with maximum loading. It doesn't make any sense. So you don't really need to be scared of like rounding with no weight. As you progress with it, your body will adapt. Like the body is ready to adapt to any kind of movement. You see children, the way they lift. When they first lift, you don't have to be scared. They can lift anything up. Like if my children are here lifting weights, it's going to be round back and they're going to be fine. You see that on building sites. The thing is to do it and to continue to do it. Be progressive with it. Stone lifts, it's the same, right? You see all power lifters are like never lift round back, and then the other strongest people in the world's strongest man competitors, compete in lifting stones where you have to round the back. So,
and even the top American Olympic weightlifter of all time, Tommy Kono, called it a loosening deadlift. And with lighter weights, with the intention to stretch, use the weight that feels good, they would do this exact same exercise. They would stand on plates and hold the bar. And if you want a rule of thumb, we found, this is not an absolute rule, it's just a helpful rule of thumb for clients, is whatever you're using perfect form on your seated good morning, up to half of that, you'll probably be totally fine on a Jefferson curl. And if anything, that differential might become a problem. Like you should be proficient in both. But if you think about the numbers there, 135 pounds is super impressive on a perfect form seated good morning, and 67 pounds is not that much weight. So to put it into context.
So interestingly enough, because of Ben, our very good friend Mark Bell, when I was out there, I had a conversation with him exactly about that. Now Mark Bell likes calling things his own little way of calling it. So he was squatting 1,080 pounds, and he told me Well, I like doing rounded back deadlifts.
Wow.
And the math on it was exactly half of a squat. So he was doing
Whoa.
rounded back deadlifts with 500 pounds. But for us, we're like, oh my God, that's great. But actually, if you do the math, it's the same half. So he, but
And if
the
he's
way he
handling
called
it, if he's handling it on a squat,
that's right. But he called it
Whoa.
lift,
Mark Bell,
lift,
amazing.
fucked up. Like that's how we call it. It's like I that's what I called it. That's the Mark Bell method. It's like lift fucked up. But you know,
Whoa.
yeah.
Like positions that you're not, when you're in life, you don't perfectly pick everything up. Sometimes you pick something up like this.
QL, Jefferson curl.
QL,
Boom.
everything. So, and it's the same thing with, oh, don't put your knee over the toe, right? It's like, well, when I go up the stairs, when I'm cutting in basketball, in football, your knee is over your toe. So you put yourself into these positions that you're theoretically more vulnerable, but you strengthen progressively through that so that you don't get injured, hence the bulletproofing.
Yep. Yeah, it's a philosophy of your life. Master subjects instead of running from them. Thank you all for being here. We now got all the filming done, so now we can just train. And we'll be back with a third video in the series, finishing with the shoulder, because the back, the lower back would not actually be complete without what's above it as well. So see you soon.